this is such a sad issue to be looking at in terms of, like you said, there is this crazy increase in terms of the number of young women who are deciding to transition very quickly to male. And I think that statistic that you mentioned from the Pew Research Center speaks to part of this, in that it is trendy nowadays to identify as transgender or non-binary. And especially when you look at that cohort of young people who are between the ages of 18 and 29, the 5%, 2% identify as a transgender man or woman, and 3% identify as non-binary. And I don't think this is simply due to social acceptance or that this is just a natural organic change that we're seeing. If you actually go in and talk to young people and understand how wokeness has basically taken over in every facet of life, it really is frowned upon to be white or heterosexual nowadays. So you can't change your race. What's the next best thing? To be an ally, it is to identify as one of these exotic millions of genders, or to decide that you are really a man if you were born female. And I think this especially targets young women because they are empathic. They want to be a part of this cause and help people who are oppressed and minority classes. And so for their way of signaling their solidarity is to, in some ways, transition.
Is it just a social accessory, which I can understand might be quite appealing, or is there something rather sad underlying it? In other words, that there's some kind of profound unhappiness in deciding that you're not satisfied with who you are?
I think a lot of it, especially among young women, there has been research to show that they are struggling with other mental health issues. In many cases, they are young lesbians who are not fully comfortable with their sexuality. In other cases, it is due to other comorbidity like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, sometimes personality disorders. Some people are on the autism spectrum and they are not being able to get the care that they deserve and need. Instead, they're being swept down this path of identifying as a different gender just because they are not typically gender conforming. So maybe if they are slightly masculine girls or what used to be called a tomboy. So I do think there are many cases, other issues that are not being discussed, and society is really doing a disservice to these individuals for not looking at what's really going on.
Officialdom is actually leaping ahead of the percentages, I would say. A 65-year-old man in the UK was turned away from a blood donor bank because he refused to answer the question. He's 65 years old and he's a man. He refused to answer the question whether he was pregnant. In other words, officialdom is accelerating with this idea that you can have men with vaginas and women with penises, and it's just basically the luck of the draw now.
It's so ridiculous, and the fact that people are being discriminated against or intimidated into going along with it, or if they do speak up and say, that's ridiculous, I'm a man, you should not be asking me if I'm pregnant or if I menstruate or any of this, or forcing us to use language like people who menstruate or people who give birth or whatever else weird dystopian anti-woman language that is being pushed upon us. I mean, I don't think, we've talked about this before, I don't think most people are, sensible people are on board with this. And I really think that if you have an issue with it, that you should be, you're totally within your right to speak up about it.